After a heated argument, my daughter canceled my flight and left me alone at the Dubai International Airport without my phone or wallet. At that moment, a wealthy businessman from a traditional family approached me and whispered, "Please pretend to be my wife. My driver will arrive any minute." Then he added with a calmness that startled me, "Your daughter will regret leaving you here. I'm glad to have you with me. Follow my story until the end and tell me from which city you're watching. I'd love to know how far this story reaches. My name is Grace Thompson and I am 64 years old. I never imagined that my own daughter would abandon me at an airport on the other side of the world. But that's exactly what happened 3 days ago in Dubai. It all started with what I thought would be the family trip of my dreams. Emily, my 38-year-old daughter, had invited me to accompany her on a business trip to the United Arab Emirates. "Mom, it's time you saw the world," she told me with that smile that always melted my heart. "After everything you've done for us, you deserve it." 4 years, I worked double shifts as a nurse to help her cover the expenses of her 2 children. When her husband left her, I was the one who moved into her house to help with everything. When she needed money to buy a new home, I emptied my savings. When the children needed expensive school uniforms, I paid for them. I always said yes because that's what mothers do. The first 4 days of the trip were wonderful. We stayed at a luxurious hotel in downtown Dubai, visited the Burj Khalifa, and explored the traditional markets. Emily seemed relaxed, even affectionate. For the first time in years, I felt like I had my daughter back. But everything changed on the 5th morning. We were having breakfast at the hotel restaurant when she received a phone call. Her face hardened as she listened. When she hung up, she looked at me with a coldness I hadn't seen since her rebellious teenage years. "Mom, we need to talk," she said dryly. "What's wrong, honey? Is everything okay?" "No, it's not." She leaned closer, her eyes full of a harshness that chilled me. "I just spoke with the school principal. I need money for the kids' tuition next year." My heart sank. "Emily, you know I don't have that kind of money." "What do you mean you don't? You've always had money when I needed it." "Because I've been using my retirement savings, sweetheart. What little I have left barely covers my expenses." Her expression changed completely. All the warmth of the previous days vanished as if it had never existed. "So you're telling me you wasted all your money on this ridiculous trip instead of helping your grandchildren?" "Emily, this trip was your idea. You paid for it. You said it was a gift. Because I thought you still had savings. I didn't realize you were so selfish." Her words hit me like slaps. For the next 20 minutes she shouted things I will never forget. She called me a burden, a useless mother who had failed at everything. "You've always been too soft, too cowardly to face real life. Always waiting for others to fix your problems. You were never a real mother, just someone who gave money when it suited her," she spat with disdain. When her outburst ended, she stood abruptly. "Pack your things. I'm taking you to the airport." "The airport? But our flight is tomorrow." "Your flight is today. I changed your ticket." The drive was silent. I trembled, trying to understand how everything had changed so quickly. The daughter who had hugged me the night before now looked at me like I was a stranger. At the airport, she handed me my passport. "Your flight leaves in 6 hours. Gate B23. "Emily, please let's talk. I don't understand what happened." "What happened is that I finally see who you really are. A selfish woman who only thinks about herself." "Selfish?" I whispered. "I've given everything for you and your children." "Yes, and now that I actually need you, you have nothing to offer." He turned away, then stopped. "Oh, and your phone, I need to take it back. It's under my plan." "My phone? But how am I supposed to reach anyone?" "That's not my problem." She extended her hand and with mine trembling, I gave it to her. She also took my wallet, saying the cards were in her name. She left me with nothing but my passport and $100 in cash I had tucked in my jacket pocket. "Good luck, Mom," were her last words before disappearing into the crowd. I stood there, a 64-year-old woman, alone in a foreign airport, without a phone, without enough money, and with no way to contact anyone. For the first time in my life, I was completely alone. The following hours passed like a nightmare. When I reached gate B23, I discovered there was no such flight. Emily had lied about that too. I tried talking to the airline staff, but the language barrier made it harder. I sat on a chair, crying silently when I heard hurried footsteps behind me. I turned and saw an elegant man around 50, wearing a perfectly tailored suit. He looked tense and in a rush. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said in Spanish with a foreign accent. "Could you do me a huge favor?" I looked at him, confused, tears still running down my cheeks. "I need you to pretend to be my wife for a few minutes. My driver will be here soon and I need to get away from certain people. Could you help me?" I don't know why, but something in his voice inspired trust. Maybe it was his desperate tone, or maybe I just needed someone to treat me as if I still mattered. "All right," I whispered. He helped me up and we walked together toward the exit. As we waited, he looked at me with an expression I hadn't seen in years: respect. "Your daughter will regret leaving you here," he said quietly. I didn't fully understand what he meant, but his words stayed with me. For the first time in hours, I felt a spark of something I thought I had lost: my dignity. The car that picked us up was more luxurious than any I had ever ridden in. The driver, an older man with a kind smile, greeted us in Arabic and then switched to Spanish at my companion's request so I would feel comfortable. "My name is Richard Coleman," he said as the vehicle pulled away from the airport. "And I suppose you're wondering what you've gotten yourself into." I nodded, still feeling trapped in a strange dream. "I'm Grace Thompson, and yes, I'm very confused." Richard smiled sadly. "I saw what happened at the airport. Your daughter left you there." "How do you know she was my daughter?" "Because I recognize that look. It's the same one my son gave me the last time I saw him 5 years ago," he said, his voice breaking slightly. "There's a kind of cruelty only children can inflict on their parents," he finally said. During the drive to his home, he told me his story. He was a widower with 3 grown children who had cut off all contact after a dispute over his late wife's inheritance. They wanted him to sell everything and split the money right away, but he wanted to keep the family businesses together. "They accused me of being greedy, of caring more about money than family," he explained. "They never understood that everything I built was for them and for their children. Now I don't even know my grandchildren." When we arrived at his residence, I couldn't hide my astonishment. It was a modern, elegant mansion with perfectly kept gardens and a breathtaking view of the city. Richard noticed my expression. "It's too big for one man," he admitted, "but I can't leave the place where I was happy with my wife." His housekeeper, an older woman named Mrs. Margaret, greeted us with tea and Arabic sweets. Richard briefly explained the situation, and she looked at me with motherly compassion before leading me to a beautiful room on the 2nd floor. "Stay as long as you need," Richard told me that first night over dinner. "I have no hidden motives. I simply know what it feels like to be abandoned by the people you love most." The following days felt almost unreal. Richard was the perfect host: respectful, attentive, considerate, but never intrusive. He lent me a phone to try to reach Emily, but she had blocked my number. When I called home from Richard's phone, my eldest grandson, Daniel, 16, answered. "Grandma, where are you? Mom says you went on a trip alone." "Daniel, sweetheart, I'm in Dubai. Your mom left me here." There was silence. "That can't be true, Grandma. Mom would never do that." "Ask her, Daniel. Ask her why I can't come home." That night my grandson called again, crying. "Grandma, Mom says you're being dramatic. That you left because you wanted an adventure and now you're making up stories to make her look bad." My heart broke. Emily hadn't just abandoned me, she was turning my grandchildren against me. That evening, Richard found me sitting in the garden, crying. He sat beside me and stayed silent for a long while. "Do you know what hurts the most?" Finally asked. "It's not that she left me, it's that she's making my grandchildren believe I'm the villain." "There's always someone who twists the story to suit themselves," Richard said calmly. "My former daughter-in-law tells my grandchildren I'm a cruel grandfather who doesn't love them. They don't even answer my letters anymore. How do you live with that? How do you go on with that pain?" I asked. Richard looked at me with those wise, understanding eyes of his. I decided that if I had to be alone, I'd rather surround myself with people who value me for who I am, not for what I can give. Over the next week, he introduced me to his circle: business people, artists, and professionals who, like him, had suffered family betrayals. For the first time in years, I took part in conversations where my opinion mattered, where people listened to my stories from my nursing years with genuine respect. "You have a remarkable insight into patient care," said a doctor during dinner one evening. "At my hospital, we need consultants with your kind of experience." "Consultants?" I asked, puzzled. Richard smiled. "Grace, you have 40 years of medical experience. That's worth gold here in Dubai, where the healthcare system is growing fast." Even so, part of me still waited for Emily to call, to apologize, to admit she'd been wrong. I kept checking the phone Richard had lent me, hoping for a message that never came. One afternoon, while he was in a business meeting, I received a call from an unknown number. It was my daughter. "Mom, where are you? The neighbors are asking about you." "I'm in Dubai, Emily, right where you left me." "Oh, stop being dramatic. I just needed some time to think. Now come back. The kids need you." "Do the kids need me, or do you need me to come back and take care of them while you go out?" "How dare you talk to me like that? I'm a single mother who works very hard. And I'm a 64-year-old woman who spent her life and her savings helping you, only to be abandoned in a foreign airport. You clearly have money to stay in luxury hotels." "I'm not in a hotel, Emily." "Then where are you?" For the first time in my life, I decided not to explain everything to my daughter. "I'm somewhere I'm valued." "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means that for the first time in years, someone treats me as if I matter for more than my bank account." There was a long silence. When she finally spoke again, her voice was so cold it sent a chill down my spine. "Fine, Mom. Stay there with your new rich friends. But when you realize they don't really care about you, don't come crying to me." She hung up before I could answer. I stayed there trembling, the phone still in my hands, when Richard came back from his meeting. "Grace, what happened?" "My daughter called, and I think I just lost my family forever." Richard sat beside me. His presence was comforting. "Sometimes losing toxic people is the only way to find ourselves," he said gently. His words echoed in my mind all night. For the first time, I began to wonder if Emily had always been this way, or if I had simply refused to see the truth for years. I had been living in Richard's house for 2 weeks when everything changed. I felt comfortable, even useful. I helped Mrs. Margaret with the meals, organized the library, and gave Spanish lessons to some of his employees. For the first time in a long while, I felt valued for something beyond my willingness to help financially. That morning, Richard seemed nervous during breakfast. He looked at me as if he wanted to say something but held back. Finally, after Mrs. Margaret cleared the table, he cleared his throat. "Grace, I need to tell you something, but I'm not sure how you'll take it." "What is it, Richard?" "It's about your daughter, Emily." My heart skipped a beat. Did something happen to her? "No, it's not that." He stood up and walked toward the window, avoiding my gaze. "Your daughter works for a company called American Tech Solutions." "Yes, she's the human resources manager there." "How do you know that?" "Because one of my companies has a contract with them. I've been in several meetings over the past few months." "Have you seen her? Spoken to her?" "Yes, Grace. And what I've seen," he ran a hand through his hair, "is not easy to say." "Please tell me." Richard sat across from me and took my hands. "Your daughter has a terrible reputation in that office. The older employees are afraid of her." "Afraid? Why?" "Because she treats them like trash. I've seen her yell at them, humiliate them in public, threaten to fire them if they don't do exactly what she says." I was in shock. "But the worst part," he continued, "is what she says about older people in general." "What does she say?" "That they're a burden to companies, that they're only there out of pity, that they should retire and give their positions to the young." I felt a blow in my stomach. That can't be true. Emily isn't like that. "Grace, last week I saw her humiliate a 60-year-old secretary in front of everyone. She told her she was too old and too slow for modern work." Tears blurred my vision. "But she was never like that with me." "With you it was different because she needed you," Richard said softly. "She needed your money, your support, your free childcare. But now that you can't give her what she wants, she's showing her true colors." "How can you be so sure it's the same person?" Richard pulled out his phone and showed me a picture. It was Emily in a meeting, wearing a cruel, mocking smile as she spoke to someone off camera. I took this photo last week. She was yelling at an older employee over a minor mistake. My world spun. The woman in that picture was my daughter, but also a stranger. How did I not see it? I whispered. "There's more," he said carefully. After our talk, I did some discreet digging. I spoke with colleagues who know about her personal situation. And what did you find out? She's been telling people for years that you're a burden, that you live off her because you can't take care of yourself. Each word felt like a knife. But I helped her for years. I paid her bills, cared for her children, drained my savings for her. "I know," Richard replied, "but she rewrote the story. In her version, you're the parasite." I stood abruptly, feeling sick. "I need some air," I said, and stepped into the garden. Richard followed a few steps behind, silent, respectful. I sat on the bench under the old orange tree where we had spent so many afternoons talking about life. But that morning felt different. The air still smelled of blossoms, the sun still lit the leaves the same way, and yet nothing felt the same. Everything I thought I knew about my relationship with Emily was falling apart. Everything I believed was unconditional love turned out to be dependency disguised as affection. "How long have you known?" I asked, staring at the ground as he sat beside me. "Since your second week here," he answered quietly. "When you mentioned your last name and where your daughter worked, I made the connection immediately. I felt a lump in my throat." "And why didn't you tell me sooner?" "Because I wanted to be sure," he said calmly, "and because I saw how much you love her. Despite everything, I knew you needed to feel strong before hearing the truth." I laughed bitterly. "Strong? I feel destroyed." "No, Grace. Look at what you've accomplished," he said tenderly. 3 weeks ago you were alone, hopeless, abandoned in an airport. Now you have purpose again. You're sharing your experience, you're being heard. That's not weakness, that's strength." He was right, but it hurt too much to admit it. I could only nod in silence. "There's something else I need to tell you," he added carefully. "Yesterday I called American Tech Solutions to confirm some meeting dates. The secretary, without realizing it, told me something shocking. She said your daughter had been bragging about an all-expenses-paid trip to Dubai. She told them she had sent you on a fully paid vacation just to get rid of you for a while, that she had finally found a way to solve her mother problem." I felt my soul shatter into pieces. It hadn't been an act of kindness. It was a calculated move. Richard lowered his gaze and continued. "I also discovered she's been looking into nursing homes in the area. She called 3 different places in the past 2 weeks. Nursing homes." I whispered, barely finding my voice. "That can't be true. Her plan, apparently, is to declare you mentally unfit when you return, to take control of your finances." The world spun around me. My own daughter hadn't just abandoned me. She was planning to lock me away and take what little I had left. How can she be so cruel? I cried, covering my face with my hands. I gave her everything, and she took advantage of me. Richard gently took my hand. "Listen to me carefully, Grace," he said firmly. "You are not responsible for other people's cruelty, not even if that person is your daughter. Don't carry guilt that doesn't belong to you." That night I couldn't sleep. I walked through the hallways in silence, my mind full of memories that suddenly took on new meaning. I remembered when Emily had yelled at me in front of her friends, when she made me feel guilty for resting after caring for her kids all day, when she treated me with impatience as if my presence were a burden. Each scene now meant something different. I hadn't been a weak mother. I was a wounded woman who had confused love with sacrifice. The next morning, Richard found me in the kitchen making coffee before dawn. "Didn't you sleep?" he asked with concern. "I couldn't," I admitted. "I kept thinking about everything you told me. And I need to ask you something, but I need you to be completely honest." "Of course," he said calmly. "Did you invite me to stay here out of pity?" Richard stopped, resting his hands on the table, and looked me straight in the eye. "I'll tell you the whole truth. First, yes, I did feel pity. I recognized in you a pain I had also lived, the pain of being abandoned." My heart dropped to my stomach. But he went on, his voice warm and steady. However, in these 3 weeks, I've discovered that you're one of the most extraordinary people I've ever met. Your wisdom, your empathy, your ability to find beauty even in suffering. You have a gift, Grace. Don't stay here out of pity. Stay because you still have so much to give. For the first time since he'd told me the truth about Emily, a spark of hope lit inside me. Do you really think I can start over here? I asked. Build a real life? I don't just think so, he said with a smile. I know it. And I'm going to help you prove it. At that moment, something changed within me. The woman who had waited for her daughter's approval died, and in her place a new woman was born, one who was finally ready to value herself. 2 days after that conversation, Richard came home with a proposal I didn't expect. Do you remember when I mentioned the need for healthcare consultants in one of my companies? Yes, of course. I meant it. Tomorrow I have a meeting with the medical director of the new senior care center we're about to open. We need someone with real experience to define our care protocols. I was helping Mrs. Margaret fold freshly washed clothes, a task that had become surprisingly soothing. Richard, I appreciate everything you've done for me, but you don't need to invent a job for me. I'm not inventing anything, he said, opening a folder from his briefcase. Look at these documents. The project is real and so is the position. Honestly, I think you'd be perfect for it. I went through the papers carefully. It was a luxury care center designed to provide top-quality attention to older adults. The blueprints showed spacious, bright facilities. But what caught my attention most were the protocols. They were correct, yes, but cold, lacking the human warmth my 40 years of experience had taught me was essential. These protocols are fine, I finally said, but they could be better. How so? He asked, genuinely interested. For an hour, I spoke about the small things that never appear in textbooks. The importance of keeping familiar routines, of communicating with patients gently, of creating spaces that radiate affection. Richard listened without interrupting, taking careful notes. This is exactly what we need, he said when I finished. Would you come with me to the meeting tomorrow? As what? As my guest, the senior consultant I'll be recommending for the position. That night I barely slept, but for the first time it wasn't because of sadness. It was excitement. It had been years since I'd felt so alive. At the hospital where I had worked for so many years, my experience had become invisible. Here Richard and his team saw it as something valuable. The meeting the next day was eye-opening. Dr. Morgan, young and brilliant, listened to me with respect as we analyzed every detail. We've studied the best centers in Europe and the United States, but something's missing, he said. Patients receive medical care, but not emotional care. Exactly, I replied. An 80-year-old patient isn't just someone who needs medicine. They're a person with memories, with a story, and that affects their well-being. For 2 hours, I explained how to improve patient care, personalizing rooms with familiar objects, training staff to listen rather than just diagnose, and creating spaces where families could feel welcome. In the end, Dr. Morgan formally offered me the position. The salary was higher than anything I had ever earned before. $7,000 per month, plus health benefits and housing. Housing? Asked, surprised. We have apartments for senior staff within the complex, Richard explained. It will give you complete independence. For the first time in weeks, I thought of Emily without pain. I remembered how she had seen me as a burden, and I realized that now I had the chance to prove otherwise, not to her but to myself. I accept, I said with a smile. And I felt as if I were waking from a dream that had lasted for years. The next few days were a whirlwind of paperwork and excitement. Richard accompanied me to get the documents I needed to work legally in Dubai and introduced me to the immigration attorney who explained the entire process. With your experience and this position, you can apply for a renewable visa, she told me. After 2 years, you'll be eligible for permanent residency. Meanwhile, I began collaborating with the design team at the medical center, helping them create spaces that would truly serve elderly patients. It was the kind of work I had always dreamed of, using the knowledge I had gathered over decades and realizing it could still make a difference. Grace, do you realize how groundbreaking these protocols are? Dr. Morgan said one afternoon, full of enthusiasm. We're building a model that other centers will want to replicate. A week after accepting the position, I received a call I had been expecting and dreading. It was Emily. Mom, when are you going to stop this nonsense and come home? The kids need you. Hello, Emily, I replied calmly. How are Daniel and Sophie? They're fine, but they miss their grandmother. Especially Daniel, he's been asking about you. My heart tightened. I miss them deeply too. Can I talk to him? He's at school, she said quickly. Mom, let's be serious. This independence phase has gone on long enough. It's time to come back to your real life. This is my real life, Emily. What's that supposed to mean? It means I have a real job here, one that pays well and where my experience is valued. There was a long silence. A job? Mom, you're 64 years old. What kind of job could you possibly have there? I'm a senior consultant at a medical center. I'm helping establish elderly care protocols. That's ridiculous. No one hires a woman your age. They're probably taking advantage of you. My boss is Richard Coleman, I said. You can look him up if you'd like. I heard nervous typing on the other end. I knew Emily was searching his name online. Mom, her voice changed tone. Are you living with a millionaire? I'm living in the home of a friend who helped me when you left me. I didn't leave you. I just needed space to think. You abandoned me in a foreign airport with no money and no phone. That's not space, Emily. That's abandonment. Maybe I overreacted, she said after a pause. But now you can come home. Everything's forgiven. Forgiven. I laughed bitterly. You forgive me? Mom, don't make this harder. I know you're upset, but you've made your point. Come back home. My home is here now, Emily. Your home? What happens when that man gets tired of you? When he realizes you're just an old woman with no money? Her words hurt, but in a different way. They didn't hurt because they were true. They hurt because they showed how my daughter truly saw me. Emily, I'm going to ask you something and I want you to answer honestly. Have you ever seen me as anything more than a free babysitter and a source of money? How can you say that? You're my mother. That doesn't answer the question. There was a heavy silence. Then in a cold voice she said, You know what? If you want to play independent with your rich boyfriend, go ahead. But when it all falls apart, don't come running to me for help. I won't need it, Emily. For the first time, I'm building something on my own. I hung up feeling a strange mix of sadness and relief. It was as if I'd broken the last chain that had kept me tied to a life that was never really mine. Richard, who had been reading in the living room and overheard part of the conversation, approached me. How do you feel? Like I've just cut the final tie that kept me a prisoner, I said. And is that good or bad? I thought for a moment. It's scary, but it also feels freeing. Richard smiled. Welcome to your new life, Grace. That night, as I packed my few belongings to move into my new apartment near the medical center, I found the phone Richard had lent me. There were several messages from numbers in the United States that I didn't recognize. I opened them and read them one by one. Grace, your daughter says you ran off with a rich man and abandoned her. Is it true you left your grandchildren for money? Your daughter's worried. She says that man's manipulating you. Each message showed how Emily was once again rewriting the story. But this time I didn't care. The opinions of people who didn't know the truth no longer had power over me. I deleted all the messages, turned off the phone, and took a deep breath. Tomorrow my new life would begin, and for the first time in decades, it would truly be mine. 3 months passed since that new beginning. The senior care center had been open for 6 weeks, and we already had a waiting list. The protocols we had developed worked better than expected. Families spoke of the warmth of the place, how their loved ones were not just well cared for but genuinely happy. Dr. Morgan had promoted me to Director of Patient Well-Being, with a raise to $7,000 per month. For the first time in my life, I had more than enough money, a comfortable home, and sincere friends. Every morning I woke up with a sense of purpose. That Thursday morning, Mrs. Margaret called me early. Grace, Habibi, you need to come to Richard's house right now. What's wrong? Is he all right? Yes, he's fine, but someone's here asking to see you. A young woman with 2 kids, she says she's your daughter. My blood ran cold. Is Emily there? Yes. And she's furious. I'm on my way, I said. The drive from my apartment to Richard's house had never felt so long. My hands were trembling as the driver he'd assigned to me navigated the morning traffic. What was Emily doing in Dubai? And why had she brought the kids? When I arrived, I could hear shouting from the garden. Her sharp voice cut through even the closed windows. This is ridiculous. I demand to see my mother right now. I walked through the main door and found her pacing like a caged animal, while Richard sat nearby, calm but tense. Daniel and Sophie were on the sofa, uncomfortable and scared. Grandma, the little girl cried, running to hug me. She was 10 now, she had grown so much. Hi, sweetheart, I whispered, returning the embrace. Daniel, now 17, approached more slowly, but I saw relief in his eyes. Grandma, Mom said you were in trouble, he murmured. That a bad man had you trapped. Emily turned toward us, her eyes blazing with anger. Finally, Mom. Pack your things, we're leaving right now. Good morning, Emily, I said calmly. How have you been? How have I been? She snapped, laughing hysterically. How do you think? My mother disappears for 3 months, lives with a stranger, and then asks how I've been. I didn't disappear, Emily. You know exactly where I've been. We've spoken several times. Spoken? 5-minute conversations. You act like you're too important for your own family. Richard stood up slowly. Miss Thompson, perhaps it would be better to continue this conversation in the study. The children shouldn't hear this. Don't tell me what's best for my children, she spat, turning like a snake. And don't call me Miss Thompson. You're the one manipulating a vulnerable old woman. Emily, I said firmly, don't speak to Richard like that. He helped me when you abandoned me. I didn't abandon you, I gave you space to think. You left me in a foreign airport with no money and no phone. Because you were being impossible. Always so dramatic. Daniel looked at me confused. Grandma, is it true? Did Mom really leave you here? I looked at him tenderly, seeing the struggle in his eyes. Yes, sweetheart. It's true. That's a lie. Emily shouted. I bought her a ticket home, she chose to stay. Emily, the ticket you gave me was fake. There was no flight. For the first time my daughter fell silent. Her proud expression shifted to shock. I saw her blink rapidly, nervous, as if she hadn't expected me to know. That was a system error, she stammered awkwardly, avoiding my gaze. No, Emily, I said slowly. It wasn't an error. It was a plan. You wanted to get rid of me for a while, but you didn't expect me to find a way to stay. Sophie tugged on my sleeve with her small hands. Grandma, why would Mom do that? She asked in a trembling voice. I looked at her, weighing how much truth a 10-year-old could handle. Sometimes adults make mistakes, my love, I said softly. Big mistakes. The kind that hurt the people they love most. They weren't mistakes. Emily shouted, her eyes red with rage. Everything I've done has been for this family. Her voice broke for a moment, then rose again. I worked like a slave to raise these kids after their father left us. And you, Mom, you were my only help. And now you repay me by running off with the first rich man who gives you attention. Emily, I said, trying to stay calm, I helped you for years. I emptied my savings, worked double shifts, and cared for your children as if they were my own. Because that's your duty as a grandmother. The word hit me like a blow. And what's your duty as a daughter? I asked firmly. I never asked you to be born, she snapped without thinking. The silence that followed was so heavy even the air seemed to stop. Sophie began to cry softly. Daniel stood frozen pale. Even Richard, who had seen many family conflicts, looked stunned. Did you just say you never asked me to be born? I asked slowly without raising my voice. Emily realized what she'd said, but her pride kept her still. You know what I meant, she muttered. Yes, Emily, I said quietly. I know exactly what you meant. And now, for the first time, I finally understand who you are. I looked at my grandchildren. Kids, could you go with Mrs. Margaret to the kitchen? I think she has some freshly baked cookies. Daniel hesitated for a moment, but Sophie took his hand and they left in silence. Then I looked straight at my daughter. Now let's talk like adults. Finally, she hissed. This charade has gone on long enough. You're right, I nodded. It has gone on long enough. I took a deep breath. For years I convinced myself your behavior came from stress, loneliness, or the burden of being a single mother. But now I see the truth. What truth? That you never saw me as your mother. You saw me as your servant, as someone who exists only to make your life easier. That's ridiculous. Oh really? Then tell me, when was the last time you asked how I was? Not out of politeness but because you actually cared. When was the last time you wondered if I was happy? Emily opened her mouth but no words came out. Do you know what I've learned in these 3 months? I continued. I've learned what it feels like to be valued for who I am, not for what I give. I've learned what it's like to have conversations where I'm heard, not where I just give. I've learned what respect means. I do respect you, she said quietly. No, Emily. You tolerated me as long as I served you. The moment I stopped being useful, you stopped seeing me. Richard cleared his throat. Ma'am, maybe you should tell your daughter about your job, he suggested. Job? Emily laughed with open contempt. Please, what kind of job could a 64-year-old woman possibly have in another country? I'm the director of patient well-being at St. Raphael Medical Center, I said calmly. I earn $7,000 a month, helping develop elderly care protocols. Her face changed completely. That's impossible. You can verify it, I replied evenly. I have a valid work visa and I'm in the process of obtaining permanent residency. But you're just a nurse. I'm a nurse with 40 years of experience, and I finally work with people who respect that. Emily sank into a chair. $7,000, she murmured. That's more than I make. Yes, Emily. The woman you called useless and old now earns more than you do. This can't be happening, she whispered, staring at the floor. You're supposed to need me, not the other way around. There was the truth. Emily wasn't hurt because she missed me. She was hurt because she had lost control. I want you to know something, I said softly but firmly. Despite everything, I love you. You're my daughter. But I won't let you treat me as if I'm worthless anymore. What does that mean? It means that if you want a relationship with me, it will be built on mutual respect, or it won't exist at all. Emily jumped to her feet. Are you threatening me? No, I'm giving you a choice. Her eyes filled with tears, but they were tears of anger, not remorse. You can't do this to me. I'm your daughter. And the kids are my grandchildren. They'll always be welcome, if they learn to treat me with dignity. This is his fault, she said, pointing at Richard. He brainwashed you. No, Emily. He helped me remember who I am. Her breathing grew uneven. Fine, she said at last. If that's what you want, if you'd rather have a stranger than your family, then stay with him. But don't expect to see your grandchildren again. Her words cut deep, but they didn't break me. If you use my grandchildren as weapons, you'll only hurt them. They'll be better off without a grandmother who abandoned them. I didn't abandon them. I found myself, I said firmly. Emily turned toward the door, but before leaving she looked back. When all this falls apart and you realize you're just an old fool deceived by a millionaire, don't come begging for forgiveness. I won't, I replied, because I've learned that forgiveness begins with forgiving myself, for allowing so much for so long. She slammed the door, dragging Daniel and Sophie toward the taxi. I heard my grandchildren sobbing as the engine started. I stood there trembling, not from fear but from something new, pain, sorrow, and a strange peace I was only beginning to recognize. Richard quietly approached and placed a hand on my shoulder. How do you feel? Like I've just walked out of a prison I didn't know I was in. A year passed. I was in my office at St. Raphael Medical Center reviewing monthly reports. Our center had become a benchmark for elderly care throughout the Middle East. Delegations from several countries came to study our methods. The woman my daughter had once called useless, was now a recognized expert. The phone on my desk rang. It was Mrs. Margaret. Grace Habibi, you have a call. It's your grandson, Daniel. My heart skipped a beat. I hadn't heard from them since that terrible visit 12 months earlier. Put him through, please. Grandma, His voice was deeper now, more grown up. I just graduated high school. Congratulations, sweetheart. And how's Sophie? She's doing well. I wanted to call because... His voice broke. Because I turned 18 and Mom can't stop me from calling you anymore. Tears blurred my vision. Daniel, my boy. Grandma, you need to know something. Sophie and I never believed what Mom said. We knew you hadn't abandoned us. What did she tell you? That you'd gone crazy, that the rich man was manipulating you, that you didn't love us anymore. Oh, sweetheart, I whispered. But we remembered what you were like before. You were always there. You always took care of us. And I've always loved you both. Every single day I've carried you in my heart. We know, Grandma. But there's something else, he added after a pause. What is it, honey? Mom lost her job 6 months ago. I felt a hollow in my stomach. Why? She was fired for mistreating older employees. There were too many complaints. Since then, she's only had temporary jobs and makes less than half of what she used to. I closed my eyes and sighed. Despite everything she'd done to me, I felt a pang of concern. Not guilt, but humanity. Because no matter what, she was still my daughter. We're doing okay financially, we have what we need, Daniel continued, his voice steadier, more mature. Honestly, things at home are calmer now that Mom doesn't have so much power over everyone. I think losing that job made her think. Has she said anything about what happened between us? I asked, holding my breath. Sometimes, he said carefully. When she's really stressed, she says everything would be different if you were here to help. But then she gets angry at herself for saying it. I closed my eyes, letting every word sink in. Daniel, can I ask you something? Of course, Grandma. Do you want me to come back? There was a long silence, so long I could hear my own heartbeat. Grandma, I just want you to be happy, he finally said. And from what I've seen of your life there, you really seem happy. You've looked into my life? I asked, smiling through tears. Yes, Grandma. I found articles about St. Raphael Medical Center. Saw photos of you at conferences with other medical professionals. You look radiant, like we haven't seen you in years. Tears streamed down my face before I could stop them. That's because for the first time in my life I feel valued for who I am, I said with a trembling voice. Then we don't want you to come back if it means being unhappy again. But we do want to be part of your life. Oh, sweetheart, of course you can be part of my life, I said, laughing through sobs. How about you come visit me during summer vacation? Really? We can? He asked, surprised. Of course. I can send you the tickets. There's plenty of room at Richard's house and I'd love for you to see Dubai. And Mom? He asked cautiously. That was the question I'd been avoiding from the start. If Emily wants to come, she'll be welcome too, I said calmly, but only if she comes with respect. I can't let her treat me the way she used to. I understand, Grandma, he said softly. And I think she's starting to understand that too. After the call, I sat in my office for a long time, gazing at the city through the window, trying to process everything my grandson had told me. Shortly after, Richard knocked on the door and stepped in. Everything all right? Mrs. Margaret said you got an important call. I told him everything. He listened quietly with that steady attentiveness that always defined him. How do you feel about them coming? He asked finally. Excited, nervous, and a little worried. Worried about what? That Emily might come too, and try to convince me to go back with them. Richard smiled gently. Grace, would you really want to go back? I thought about his question. I imagined myself again in my old house, cooking, cleaning, caring for the kids, waiting for a kind word that never came. No, I said firmly. I don't want to go back to that life. Then there's nothing to worry about, he said. You're not the same woman you were a year ago. He was right. The woman who had once been abandoned at that airport had defined herself by what she did for others. The woman I was now defined herself by her own worth. 2 months later, Daniel and Sophie arrived in Dubai. Seeing them again was one of the happiest moments of my life. Sophie, now 11, ran to me at the airport and hugged me so tightly I thought my heart would burst. Daniel, tall, serious, and handsome, hugged me more calmly but with the same love. Grandma, this place is amazing, Sophie exclaimed as Richard's driver took us home. Over the next 2 weeks, I showed them my new life. I took them to the medical center so they could meet my colleagues and see the work I did. I introduced them to my friends who welcomed them with genuine warmth. I showed them my apartment decorated with family photos, mementos from home, and new memories built here, among these streets under the sun. One evening, while we were having dinner in Richard's garden, Daniel looked at me and said, "Grandma, I've never seen you this peaceful." "What do you mean?" I asked. "Before, you always looked tired, like you were waiting for something bad to happen. Here you're different. You. Sophie nodded. "Yes, and everyone here respects you. At the clinic, that doctor said you're the wisest person she knows." I smiled. "That's because here people see me for what I know, not just as the grandmother who cooks and runs errands." On the last day of their visit, Sophie asked me a question that broke and healed my heart all at once. "Grandma, can I come live with you when I finish school?" "Why, love, why would you want to do that?" "Because you're happy here. And when you're happy, I'm happy too." That night, after the kids went to bed, Richard and I sat in the garden as we so often did. "Are you thinking about what Sophie said?" he asked. "Yes. It's tempting, isn't it? Having them here would be wonderful. But I don't want them to come for the wrong reasons. I want them to build their own lives, not run away from their mother." "You're a very wise woman," he said with a smile. I looked into his eyes. "Richard, there's something I've always wanted to ask you." "Go ahead." "Do you ever regret helping me that day at the airport?" He looked surprised. "Grace, helping you was the best thing I've done in years. You didn't just rebuild your life. You helped me rebuild mine." "What do you mean?" "Seeing your strength, your ability to start over at 64, inspired me to reconnect with my own children." "And how did that go?" "My youngest son answered my letters last month." "It's a start," he said with a smile. The next day, I took Daniel and Sophie to the airport. Emily was waiting for them in the arrivals hall. She looked thinner, more tired, with dark circles under her eyes that spoke of sleepless nights. When she saw us, she stood up. For a moment, I thought she might start shouting, but she simply said, "Hi, Mom." "Hi, Emily," I replied calmly. The silence between us was heavy. Daniel and Sophie were arranging their luggage. "They look happy," Emily said. "They finally had a wonderful vacation." "Yes, they did," I replied. "Mom, she began, then stopped. "Never mind. Just take care of yourself." It wasn't an apology, but it was more than I had expected. As I watched them walk away, I didn't feel the old despair. I felt hope. 6 months later, I received a letter from Emily. A real letter, handwritten. "Mom," it began, "I've been thinking a lot about what happened between us. I lost my job because I treated older employees the same way I treated you. Seeing that made me realize things I don't like about myself. I'm not ready to fully apologize yet because I'm still angry at you for leaving, but I'm starting to understand why you did. The kids talk about you all the time. They say you look happy, that your work matters, that people respect you. I never saw you that way when you lived here, and that was my fault. I don't know if we'll ever be able to fix what's broken, but I want you to know that I'm trying to be a better person, a better mother. Maybe one day I can be a better daughter too. The kids want to visit you again this summer. If that's all right with you, I'd like to send them." That night, sitting on my balcony overlooking the city I now called home, I wrote my reply. "Emily, I meant to write your name as it is, but my hand wrote it softly. Of course the children can come next summer. And if one day you want to come too, you'll be welcome. But only if you come as a daughter who respects her mother, not as someone trying to bring me back to who I was before. I'm proud of the woman I've become, and I will never apologize for that. With love, Mom." As I sealed the envelope, I thought about how far I'd come, from being a woman abandoned in an airport to becoming an internationally respected professional, from being seen as a burden to being valued for my wisdom, from living for others to finally learning to live for myself. I didn't know if Emily and I would ever have the mother-daughter relationship I had once dreamed of, but for the first time that was okay. I no longer needed it to feel at peace. I had a full life, purposeful, warm, and meaningful, with or without her approval. The next day, as I walked through the halls of St. Raphael Medical Center, greeting patients who welcomed me with genuine smiles and gratitude, I realized something profound. I had found my place in the world. A place earned through effort, tears, and growth. And most importantly, it was a place no one could ever take away from me. That afternoon, Richard stepped into my office. I was reviewing patient progress reports, smiling from deep within my soul. "Do you know what's most beautiful about your story, Grace?" he asked, leaning against the doorway. "What is it?" I asked curiously. "That you didn't need revenge to find happiness," he said calmly. "You simply chose to value yourself." He was right. The best revenge had never been to hurt Emily or prove her wrong. The real revenge had been building a life so full, so genuine, and so free that her opinion of me no longer had any power. That evening, as I prepared dinner in my apartment bathed in golden sunset light, the phone rang. It was Sophie. "Grandma, guess what?" she said excitedly. "What is it, sweetheart?" I asked, smiling. "Mom said I can study business administration when I go to college. She said maybe I could work in hospitals like you do." I smiled, feeling that familiar warmth in my chest, the kind only love can bring. "That sounds wonderful, Sophie. I'm so proud of you." "Grandma, can I ask you something?" she said in a softer voice. "Of course, my dear. Do you ever get scared being so far away from us?" I thought about her question calmly. I looked out the window, watching Dubai's sky fade into violet. "Sometimes I miss you," I answered honestly. "I wish I could hug you every day and hear your laughter in person. But I'm not afraid, sweetheart, because I know that wherever we are, I carry you in my heart. And most importantly, I know that no matter what happens, I will never lose myself again." After hanging up, I poured myself a cup of tea and stepped out onto the balcony. The lights of Dubai sparkled across the horizon, like thousands of stars reflected on the earth. At 65, I finally understood the most important lesson of my life: that I deserved love, respect, and happiness, and that the only person responsible for ensuring I had them was me. The woman who had once been abandoned in an airport no longer existed. In her place lived another woman, one who knew her worth, who loved herself, and who no longer asked permission to exist. She was free. She was happy. And for the first time, she was enough. And if this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments which part moved you the most.